I have a very special announcement. Today is somebody's birthday, and that somebody is our audiovisual master, none other than David Knight. So ladies and gentlemen, let's sing happy birthday to him, would you? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you. Thank you for sharing your birthday. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce our next speaker, who is J. Gary Shaw, who is a retired architect from Cleburne, Texas, and a first-generation assassination researcher who began studying the case on November 22nd, 1963. I don't know what took him so long. In 1966, after reading Penn Jones Jr.'s Forgive My Grief, Volume 1, Shaw met with Joneses, and the two became close friends and colleagues. Shaw wrote several articles for Jones' newspaper, the Midlothian Mirror. In 1976, Shaw and researcher Larry Ray Harris published Cover Up, the governmental conspiracy to conceal the facts about the public execution of John Kennedy. Shaw, along with Larry Howard and Bud Festerwald, co-founded the JFK Assassination Information Center in Dallas. Shaw was an officer and a director of the Assassination Archives and Research Center in Washington, D.C. In 1992, Shaw and Parkland Hospital doctor Charles Crenshaw wrote JFK Conspiracy of Silence, which quickly became a New York Times bestseller. Recently, Shaw began providing his personal assassination collection to Project JFK Dallas for research purposes. And because his bio was so long, I'm sorry his time has expired, so sorry, Gary. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome J. Gary Shaw, who's going to speak about Roscoe White's story, fiction or fact, you be the judge.
Thank you.
You want to bring that down?
Way down. Thank you, Don. Thank you, guys. You know, the work that goes into this, I can't express my appreciation to people like Don and David Denton and Olney. Is that the way you say it?
Olney, man, good
All right.
You got that Texas accent.
Yeah. We do appreciate you, and I appreciate you guys staying late, and hopefully you'll enjoy. And again, that's not the word. Beg pardon?
It will be worth it.
All right, hope so. Okay, let's begin. Let me get this up close. Can you hear me all right? All right. This presentation is about an aspect of the JFK assassination that has been often described as controversial, erroneous, a fabrication, disinformation, misinformation. All kinds of things have been said about it and me and the people who've tried to promote this. This first story came out back in 1990. How long ago is that? Entities, especially the FBI and that bunch, but also from at JFK critics and researchers, because it's controversial. You can't just say, hey, this is real, any more than we can say that this date book, was real and get everybody to believe it. But I want to tell you what's gone on, what I've been doing for the last few years, and what I'm going to try to put online, because I need your help. All right? There's information in this that I can't understand that you might. There's photographs and so forth in here that I don't know people that I don't know, that you might can pass it around and find somebody. So I'm going to share those things with you, but I plan on putting it on JFK, Project JFK, CSI Dallas, the Kansas City bunch, so that you'll have access to it when this is over. I also want to point out that the real artifacts that I'll show photographs here are back here on this table. And you can see for yourself, like the date book that you just looked at, how real these really are and why we were sold on it originally and have pursued it since that time. I stress fabrication or fact, the Roscoe White story. You can make your own decision about this after hearing it. Too many times we listen to the media and the naysayers and the lone nutters about these things. But I hope you'll make your own decision after you look at this. In a nutshell, this is what's transpired in this story. While in the Marines, military records show that Roscoe White and Lee Harvey Oswald were either sailing together on the same ship or were stationed together at the same location for a total of 181 days. In late 1963, a few weeks before President Kennedy was to come to Dallas, Mrs. Roscoe White, Geneva, went to work for Jack Ruby. Roscoe joined the Dallas Police Department, and Lee went to work for the Texas School Book Depository. In Marine Corps training, Roscoe was considered an excellent rifleman, a top rifleman, while Lee was deemed a very poor shot. Toward the end of their enlistment, both men requested and were granted hardship discharge. So in 1982, a 22-year-old son of Roscoe, Ricky White, had rediscovered his now deceased father. His father was killed in a so-called accident in 1971. And after the funeral, and they started getting things together to close things out for his dad, he found his dad's Marine Corps footlocker that had been missing for years, stored back in his grandparents', Roscoe's parents' storeroom. And so he immediately took that home and began to go in through it. Also in this footlocker was a receipt for a $100,000 bearer bonds, an unmarked bank safety box key, and his father's forgotten diary. The family had remembered him keeping this journal all through his years, but it had been long gone. They hadn't seen it, so it was in the footlocker. It was several years before Ricky, who, and I put this mildly, he was not an avid reader. In fact, he was not a reader at all. But he got to reading his dad's journal, the diary. And in late 1987, while attempting to get to the bottom of the safety deposit box and the bearer bond issue, which I would have tried to find out, Ricky approached the local district attorney in Midland, Texas, and told him his story and requested assistance. That was a big mistake. The DA spooked when he saw what all Ricky had and went to the local FBI office with that information. So what did the FBI do? They immediately began to surveil Ricky and his wife Tricia. When Tricia told me that they were doing that, I told her, I don't think they'd have been doing that. Well, I found out later there's about 30 sheets of that surveillance that I got from the FBI. So they were doing it. And the fact of the matter is, they were doing it before they even saw the contents of the footlocker. They had just been told about it from the district attorney there in Midland, Texas. My question, why such concern for the lone nut having done it? Finally, after a few days of nothing surveillance, the agents went to the DA and told him to go tell White that the FBI needed to speak to him. On January 13, 1988, 2 FBI agents went to the White home, threatened Ricky with a severe penalty if he withheld evidence in a criminal case, then told him to bring everything he had of Roscoe's to their office. At the FBI office there in Midland, the agents, while on a speakerphone with a Washington senator, grilled and ridiculed Ricky. Following about 4 or 5 hours of harassing inquisition, they told Ricky that what he had was not true and was of no value to anyone. Thoroughly beaten down and humiliated, Ricky went to his home, laid down on his bed and cried. The diary suddenly disappeared. That's a part of the story that I'll get to. Ricky is so dead certain that the FBI stole it, and I'm pretty dead certain that they did too. Of course, the FBI categorically denies all knowledge of the diary. Where have we heard that? Let me say this. This is a disclaimer. I truthfully don't know that this story is absolutely true. I can't know. I don't think you can, but I think you can find out a lot about it that will give us some idea as to the truth of the matter, but I'll leave that to you. What I do know is that Ricky did not make it up. He was truthful when he came to us, and the material, as you'll see, is very, very significant, and the provenance and so forth and the authenticity of the artifacts are outstanding. Needless to say, I've only got a short time to do this. All we know is that the government's official versions of President John F. Kennedy's assassination would have you believe that this murder was carried out by a 24-year-old ex-Marine with communist sympathies and that he acted alone and unaided. The story I'm about to relate concerns what appears to be the handwritten confession of a 28-year-old ex-Marine acting in concert with Confederates and while undercover as a Dallas policeman killed JFK. The Roscoe White story asks that you take another look at what happened. In truth, the story I'm about to relate to you has been and continues to be received with much skepticism and ridicule. So you can decide which story makes the most sense. You can choose which version of JFK's assassination rings more true to you. Some may ask, well, why do I believe the Ricky White story? I'll give you several reasons. One, the honesty and the integrity of Ricky and Tricia White. Number two, the manner in which the story came to us. We were not out searching for it, looking for somebody to confess. He came to us with all the materials and with the story. The manner in which the story was attacked. You can't believe the attack that came when this story broke. It was a madhouse. Certain mainstream media sources and the lone nut crowd, really fought it. The provenance and authenticity of the artifacts involved. Take a look at them. The indisputable association between Roscoe, Jack Ruby, and Lee Oswald. And number five, the conspicuous agitation and uneasiness of the FBI agents prior to their seeing and reading the diary, and of course their surveillance of both Ricky and Tricia after seeing it, or before seeing it. There was also a telephone hookup with a senator. I'm not sure, and Ricky's not either, whether it was Schweiker. You remember Senator Schweiker was looking into the Kennedy assassination. And actually, two investigators had come to Geneva in I believe it was in about 1970, early 1970s, when Schweiker was investigating the Kennedy assassination. And actually, they're the ones that found, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, the third photograph of Oswald with the rifle in the communist newspaper. 133C, it's called. And so this is, I think, is especially significant, especially with the duplicity and the actions of the FBI when it pertains to this case, period. Okay, next slide. This is okay, this is Ricky and Tricia White. Ricky's just a good old country boy, a Texas boy. He graduated high school, married his sweetheart. He's 62 years old today. Okay, they've been married 42 years. He has 2 children, 2 girls, and several grandchildren. He owns and operates his own successful business. All right? So he's not just a fly-by-night punk. In my opinion, Ricky is as honest and sincere as anyone I've ever known, and he would not ever make up a story like this. So this story came to us through the son and the daughter-in-law. And who is us? Well, it was me. First of all, it was Larry Ray Harris. Y'all remember Larry Ray Harris? He was co-author with my book, Cover Up. And he told Larry about it. He didn't want to go any further. And then Larry said, well, we got to bring Gary in. And so he told it to the 2 of us. And then I said, well, we better bring Bud Finsterwald in. He was our partner in the JFK Assassination Center. And so we brought Bud in and we began to investigate this. And so with Larry Howard and others, we began to look into it. To be honest, I think we broke it too soon. I wanted to investigate it further. They didn't. They thought it was too important. In fact, Bud wrote me a letter that said lives might be in danger if we didn't go ahead and break the story. So we broke the story. Next slide. This is Roscoe's Marine Corps foot locker, and that's where all the material was found initially. To the right is a Mark IV Model II pistol container from the U.S. Navy. It's waterproof. It floats if it falls into the water. He originally buried the materials that you see there on the right, 2 plastic sheets laminated together with artifacts in them, and a little book that he, in the diary, called the Witness Elimination Book. We called it the Green Book because I didn't know whether to call it a Witness Elimination Book or what. But that's what was in there. The plastic was rolled up around the edges, and the small book, was stuck down in between the sheets. Next slide. This was what was in the foot locker. Okay. All of his Marine Corps career and all kinds of artifacts, but if you look right over here, this is the original Oswald third photograph that was found in the foot locker and turned over eventually to the House Select Committee, and they began to do work on it. The rest of it, here's one of the photographs, but it was full of information about his career, but no diary. Here's what the House Select Committee said about it in 1977. See, this is long before all of this transpired. The committee obtained an 8x10 print of an additional view of Oswald holding the rifle in a pose different from CE 133A or B. This photograph, a first-generation print, was given to the committee on December 30th, 1976 by Mrs. Geneva Dees of Paris, Texas. According to Mrs. Dees, she had remarried. It had been acquired by her former husband, Roscoe White, now deceased, while employed with the Dallas police at the time of the assassination. Next slide. This slide is the safety deposit box, the bank bag, and to the right, it's not the actual diary, but it was one very similar to the one that disappeared. Next slide. This is the Green Book. It's let me just read you what it is, because it's actually a dictation book, study book from the 1920s. It had a lot of the pages torn completely out, and then Roscoe had taken it and turned it upside down, starting from the back, and began to give information and make a scrapbook out of it. That's this book here. This plastic laminated deal here, these are photographs, and the negatives of photographs of Roscoe White's family. Why are they in there? Well, that tells you who this is. This belongs to Roscoe White. This is his family. Of course, this you can see is Jack Ruby, so it pertains to Jack Ruby. This is Warren handing off the Warren report to LBJ in this one. Over here are the three mysterious cables. We'll talk some about that. And though you can't tell much about them, you can see a little bit. They've become faded with years, the printing on them, the writing in this book. But we've made good copies originally when we first got them. And you can see that they're very, very real and very stimulating in thought. All right, next slide. These three typewritten, well, first of all, let me tell you this. After we found this and we got the story mostly done, it was against my will, but we turned the story over to Earl Goles of the Dallas Morning News, who had gone to the American Statesman in Austin to do a story. So he did a front page story and it went worldwide. Man, it took off. Next slide. So the next day after that, we'd already planned a press conference. Every major and minor media was at the JFK Assassination Center where we held this press conference and revealed all of this to us. This was 6th of August, 1990. That's Ricky behind the podium. That's Bud Finsterwall, Larry Howard, and the good-looking guy there is me. So you can see the kind of crowd that was there. All right, and also in the canister was Roscoe's dog tag and chain. There's 3 typewritten messages in clear plastic sheets. They talk about, they're from Navy Intel, and it's to Mandarin, and it shows Roscoe White's Marine Corps serial number, and is signed off at the end of them, C. Bowers, O-S-H-A. I don't know what that means, but we'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. I'm going to run through some of this. Next slide. This is a Marine Corps picture of Roscoe. He's shooting at you. This is his graduation from the rookie school at the Dallas Police Department. The arrow points to him in the center. We found out that that center position and his records show he was the #1 man in the class. Okay, this was in '63. He had gone to work there in October of '63. Next slide. This is Roscoe in Geneva. He's still in the Marine Corps, and you can see she's a beautiful lady. And of course, that's J.D. Tippett, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Ruby. Some real friends, we know that. All right, here's quickly, just real quick, Oswald and White's Marine Corps, as I said, overlapped. Oswald joined the Marines in October 1956, and White enlisted in February of 1957. Oswald got out on a hardship discharge in September of '59. White received a hardship discharge in April of 1962. Their enlistment terms overlapped from 22 February 1957 until Oswald's discharge on 11/7/1959, a total of 931 days. That's about 2.5 years. Both men were stationed in San Francisco area for 466 days. Both were in El Toro, California for 17 days. Both men were aboard the same ship, the USS Bayer, for 23 days. Their Far East assignments overlapped 355 days, almost a year. Both men had a lot of Texas connections and so forth. So could they have known each other? Well, Texans gravitate to each other. So I think that they probably did. In fact, I know they did when they got to Dallas. Okay, on October the 7th, White is hired by the Dallas Police Department. Before he hires on there, Geneva is hired by Jack Ruby. And 9 days later, on October the 16th, Oswald hires on at the Texas School Book Depository. Less than 6 weeks later, Kennedy is dead. Next slide. This is Geneva, and this is Jack Ruby, and he's admiring her legs or whatever. And this is her dancing on the table at the Vegas Club. She was kind of a cigarette girl, okay? But they were well acquainted with this man right here. Next slide. Again, we'll see the diary and the Foot Locker. They had some very stunning revelations, and I asked Ricky and Tricia, who read that one page about the assassination over and over again. And we didn't have the diary. I said, can y'all try to put it together for me? Rewrite it as you read it, and as you remembered it. And so they did that for me. I'll not read all of it, but it starts out 11/22/63, Lebanon, 6th floor, Saul, Records Building, Mandarin, stockade fence. Shots fired from upper buildings for diversion. Shots fired, looks as if target was hit. Shot from fence, definite hit. And it goes on and on, even to the point of killing an officer in Oak Cliff, which was J.D. Tippit. And that's a whole other story. Let me go through here, because we're going to be limited in time. Next slide. Let's look at the contents of the canister first. This was had the old mutilated textbook entitled The New Universal Dictation Course by Graham, and the several news clippings pertaining to the JFK assassination, 3 typewritten messages laminated between plastic sheets, as I said, White's Marine Corps dog tag, and the family photographs, negatives of the family photographs. Here are the 3. Next slide. Next slide. You awake? These are early. We made them the same day that we found the cables. These are the copies that we were able to make. We didn't take them out of the plastic. We were afraid to, but we can read most everything on these. And you'll find back there where we've retyped some of them for clarity. And we call them orders for Mandarin. Next slide. This first one, up at the top right, says Navy Int. Code A, MRC, remark data, Roscoe serial number, then MRC, VDC, and NAC, and February of 63. Starts out remarks Mandarin, code A, and it reads foreign affairs assignments have been canceled. The next assignment is to eliminate a national security threat to worldwide peace. Destination will be Houston, Austin, or Dallas. Contracts are being arranged now. Orders are, and there's a couple of 3 illegible words. Change at any time, reply back if not understood. C. Bowers, OSHA. Very bottom, RE rifle, code AAA, destroy / own / A lot of that we don't understand. Maybe somebody out there could understand it. Let me talk, next slide, before we go any further, a little bit about the Navy intel. Excuse me, maybe, have you got the second one up there? No. This is what I wanted to talk about, and then we'll come back and talk about those. There's a possible connection between Roscoe White and something called Navy Int. John Mason Langford, that's his pictures that were just flashed up. He was from Fort Worth, Texas. He was a longtime friend and my longtime friend and fellow researcher, Bill Kelly, has written quite a bit about him, so you can read about him. In November 1963, Langford was a special agent for the Office of Naval Intelligence. It went by ONI. It was often referred to, though, as Navy Intelligence Service, Navy INT. Navy Intelligence Service, or NIS, was commonly used to refer to the ONI. In fact, an associate of Langford's in ONI's Fort Worth office, a man by the name of Sullivan, used NIS designation rather than ONI on his tombstone there in the Fort Worth Cemetery. Langford was also an old acquaintance of Secret Service agent Mike Howard. Now there's a fine name for you. Anybody heard that name? Quite a few of you have. It was SS agent Howard who called on ONI Special Agent Langford to assist him with security in Fort Worth on the day and night prior to the assassination. And on Sunday morning, Howard again calls on Langford to assist him with security for Marina and Marguerite Oswald. Another intriguing connection, one of Langford's informants at the time was a man by the name of Robert Kermit Patterson. You can read quite a bit about him in the Warren volumes, in the Warren Report. Patterson was a former Navy man, had been furnishing information to Langford for quite some time. 4 days after the assassination, Langford reported to the FBI that Patterson had told him of having seen Ruby and Oswald together at the Carousel Club. What does all this have to do with Roscoe White and his mysterious cables? As Bill Kelly reported, from 1948 to 1972, this same John Mason Langford of Navy Intelligence also served as Director of Security for either General Dynamics or its Convair division. And Roscoe White had been employed at Convair from May 8, 1966 to July 28, 56. May 8, 1956 to July 28, 1956. It was in his capacity as the Director of Security from ONI-NIS, Special Agent Langford provided verification of White's Convair employment when White made his 1963 application to the Dallas Police Department. Back to the, let's look at the, is that message number 2?
That's number 2.
That's number 2. All right, basically the same thing up at the top right-hand corner, and it's same code A. But this says Dallas destination chosen. Your place hidden within the department. Contacts are within this letter. Continue on as planned. Again, at the bottom, the RE rifle, code AAA, destroy on, and so forth. I like this one statement, contacts are within this letter. Figure that one out for me. All right? Somewhere in there, and when we get into the green book, there's going to be series after series of numbers and markings. And I know for a fact that documentation is that even Jack Ruby used code in his communications. I believe it's some type of code in that, and it might tell us something. All right, this is the last message, number 3. It's in December 1963. All the others, the other 2 messages were code AAA. This is code C. I have no idea what that means. But it says, stay within department. Witnesses have eyes, ears, and mouths. You know what to do of the mix-up. The men will be in to cover up all misleading evidence soon. Stay as planned, wait for further orders. Same sign off down at the bottom, RE rifle. Of course, we've been informed by supposedly people in the know that those are not a standard format for Navy intelligence or any other intelligence agency. I've had others to tell me it is, that they'd received messages, former CIA agents, of like matter. The thing I would suggest to you, whoever sent this message to Roscoe White is someone he knew, and they were his superiors. He was used to getting orders like this, and that was it, period. All right, next slide. This is the green book. Next one, right here. Look at it back there. I've opened it up so you can see a couple of pages. And like I say, it's an old dictation course book by Graham. And let's see. Seems like there's 186 pages been torn completely out. The remaining pages of the book have been utilized as a scrapbook. It's in such an order, it looks like my 7-year-old grandson could have done a better job of organizing it. It's not neat, you know, which to me means, hey, he slapped it together in his spare time and hid it back. Anyway, whatever it is, you'll find it fascinating. Next slide. This is the inside of the back cover, okay? This is the back cover. This is the first page on the back. So looking at it in the inside top cover, I wish it was clear enough for you to see it, but you can, if you had it, you could see it, okay? At the top it says players or witnesses, okay? That means the topic has to do with players or witnesses. On the facing page at the top it says R.A. White and then his military serial number. Written vertically on the page, right here, right here on this one, I think. It says 28 people died from witness program. Take out the rest of people later. Underneath the numbers we see that are on there, the signature, it says his actual signature. Next page, and I'll show you that. This is his actual signature right here. This says 28 people have died from the witness program. Take out the rest of the people later. And that's a pretty damning statement. There's a lot of other illegible and some legible numbers on those pages that we have no idea what they mean. Next page, please. These are the first pages in the back of the book, and on one side, you call it the top left, this right here, that is a news clipping from the June 13, 1966 Dallas Times-Herald. This gives us some idea of the time frame that this was created, but also what it's really about. It's about Ruby because it shows him arriving in the courthouse with Bill Decker, the sheriff, and he's there for his sanity hearing, believe it or not. There are 3 long pencil marks across the photo. This is a pattern that plays out the rest of the book. There's a handwritten notation, good man die for good, right. Is he talking about Ruby? On the top right, there's another news clipping which reads, the moment the world stood still. And there are 4 long pencil strokes across that clipping. And barely visible in the dark background, there's the pencil, it's been penciled in 1963, November. Another handwriting on there says, even now from Bay of Pigs die, N-O, capital N, capital O. I don't know whether he's saying no or New Orleans. On the lower left is President John Kennedy, his younger brother, Robert. This appears to be in fact I found out it was, a picture taken at the McClellan Senate hearings involving Hoffa, if you remember back that long. Below the photo, the handwritten notation, now got the head, going tail later. Did you just hear that today, didn't you? Talked about that. In the Washington Post article, Las Vegas entrepreneur Ed Becker was told by Marcello in September 1962 that he would take care of Robert Kennedy and that he would recruit some nut to kill JFK so it couldn't be traced to him. According to several accounts, Marcello told Becker that the, quote, the dog, President Kennedy, meaning President Kennedy, will keep biting you if you only cut off its tail, the Attorney General, of course, but the biting would end if the dog's head was cut off. This was not common knowledge before 1970. This was in the Washington Post later than that. On the lower right, There's several rows of illegible handwritten number sequences, and it appears to read hog or pigs. Now, I don't know what that means. Was he calling them hog or pigs? I don't know. There's a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald, where he's called the lone assassin. And then there's the photograph, and under his photograph it says, "Man die with honor as all man. Good luck, Lee." Below that, below the Oswald photo, there's notations, and the news photo of a young and attractive blonde-headed woman. That's right here. And you can see it better in some of the other photographs I'll have later. I think this is a lady by the name of Novotny, who was one of John Kennedy's mistresses and suspected of ties to foreign intelligence enemies of the United States. All right, next page. This is a top photo. At the top of the page, it says, quote, Mandarin kills K, uses 7.65 Mauser in assassination. And then there's a couple of words that are illegible. Mandarin, of course, we learned, Reiki had learned from the diary, was his daddy's code name. And I would say that's a confession. It's in his writing. Below that notation is a news clipping of the famous Mary Moorman photograph. And as you look at, here's, you can see the stockade fence up here. You can see Kennedy here with pencil marks across him. You can see a black X and a black dot up here at the top of the picket fence. And that's the reason he was saying Mandarin kills K. And he's pointing out where the shot came from. At the top of the page on the right, of course, it says lambs. And then below that notation, it shows the Secret Service recreation of a shooting from the 6th floor window. That's the car that they were using. At the bottom of the page on the left, it's a picture of Oswald in custody of the Dallas police with detectives Elmer Boyd and M.G. Hall. And underneath that, it appears to say Amos Ewings. Now, most of you know who Amos Ewings is, a witness to the assassination. Looking at the page on the right, there's a news clipping of, on the bottom photograph, a picture of J.C. Day, who was in charge of the crime lab during that period of time, and he's holding high above his head the alleged murder weapon. Below the clipping is handwritten notation, 7.65 Mauser, our gun used in killing President Kennedy, 1963, November 22, 1963. That's scribbled below it. Go ahead and go to the next one. It's just a quick blow up because I wanted you to see this black dot and this X through it and the pencil mark across Kennedy down here. That's from the previous page. Over on the right, you'll see a picture of one of Garrison's witnesses. This is Perry Raymond Roscoe, all right, from New Orleans Clay Shaw trial. At the right of Rousseau's photograph are the words, "Big mouth, you talked after all." That's a quote. At the right-hand side of the page is the handwritten notation that appears to be a name. This is on, and you can't see that over here. But these are two military men. Okay, one up here and one down here. I don't know how clear those are to you, but they're fairly clear in the book. The identity and of those two we'll talk about in a minute. My suspicion of their identity. Next slide. This officer at the top was wearing a shoulder patch. This shoulder patch is this patch here, and it's the patch for the U.S. Army 1st Aviation Group. All right? I understand it's a helicopter group. I believe it's, next slide, this man right here. Here's the patch. He's got the same patch over here, and this man is this man. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I'm looking at him, and I hopefully some of you will look at him. I believe him to be Brigadier General George P. Sennett, Sennett, Jr., who was Staff Aviation Officer at Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, from 1966 to 1967. Note that he's wearing the same shoulder patch. As to why he's in the Green Book, I don't know. He commanded the 11th Air Assault Aviation Group in 1963 and developed air mobile tactics for Vietnam. He lived all the way to 1996. He died of Alzheimer's. So, in your spare time, help me find out more about this guy. The other guy is even more mysterious. Next slide. I think he's this guy right here. Do you see a resemblance? Let me tell you a little about that guy. He was in Special Forces in 1960, up until 1967. In 1967. He was discharged in 1971, the same year that Roscoe White died. After his discharge, he did contract work in Rhodesia, Angola, and for the CIA. In the late 70s, he worked with the CIA, and it had to do with the Contras and Nicaragua. When he got out of the service and retired, he lived on the streets. Had his little bag. He was a bag man, not a bag lady. But he did have a little storage unit. In 2015, he was hit and killed by a hit-and-run driver. So he had befriended during that time a Miami cop, and the cop goes to his storage unit and starts pulling out his materials. One of the things he pulls out is his passport. His passport had Cambodia, Venezuela, Iraq, Jordan, all of these countries that he traveled in after his service. Where did he get the money? He's living on the street. It's a good question. He was also, by the way, an informant for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Help me find him, more about him. Next slide. These are a number of pictures that have some mystery to them. This man, this woman, I think this is a masculine woman. And these are a couple of, I'll just briefly tell you about those. How's my time? 10 minutes? No way. All right.
Give him more time.
Yeah. I believe the man on the top left is a man by the name of Maurice Brooks Gatlin Sr., who was an associate of Guy Bannister in New Orleans. In 1965, he either fell or was pushed out of the sixth-floor window of a hotel in Panama. Interesting connections to Clay Shaw and the New Orleans mess. The dark-headed girl, I believe to be Ella Romatish, who was a mistress of John Kennedy's and thought to have been a foreign agent for the East German government. Another one of the things that they were really questioning him about, because he's afraid the president might do a little pillow talk with some of these ladies. He was bad about that. All right. Facing that page, you see 4 photographs. Up at the top, it says ROSS space IAN space 1968, followed by some illegible handwritten notations. I'll not go into detail about this, but I will talk a little bit about this woman here, and I'll show you a picture of her in a minute. There was a female impersonator, stripper, dancer, singer, and she played at the Club My Oh My. Any of you ever hear of Club My Oh My in New Orleans? Well, surely you've been there. It's a club for female impersonators. Her stage name, Mr. Harvey Lee. She's a female impersonator, and her name, you can't make this up, Mr. Harvey Lee. On that same page, it says, quote, "Cover up starts now," pertaining to these 2 men at a table. I have not been able to identify him, but if any of you want to help me try, it's a newspaper print, I can tell you that, and it has to do with Oswald and Ruby and so forth. But he says cover up starts now in handwriting there. All right, I won't tell you much about this. These are the reason Kennedy came to Texas. You remember? They were having big problems in the Democrat. Yeah, Democratic Party was split, and this is Ralph Yarborough down here, and of course this is John Conley, and LBJ and John Kennedy, and there was a big mess about that. So I think that has something to do with that. The next page, over here, is a mutilated picture of President Lincoln, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. It has two numbers. One, it has a number 1 in a circle above him, and the number 26 in a circle below him. What the heck does that mean? I don't know. I'd like to know. Next slide. This is who I think is Ella Romatish. This is a real picture of Ella. She plays into Coup in Dallas and Pierre Lafitte and that whole date book thing of Pierre Lafitte's. This are other possibilities. This is Marita Lorenz, Castro's girlfriend, and this is Judith Exner Campbell, who was also a lover of John Kennedy and Sam Giancana at the same time, if you recall. All right, next page. Just to show why I think this is Maurice Brooks Gatlin in reality. That's the picture I showed you a while ago. This is Novotny, and this is the picture I showed you. All these have pencil marks on them, you notice. And of course, this is Mr. Harvey Lee, or the picture in the date book, in the green book. This is the real Mr. Harvey Lee. She's older here. In fact, she performed a number of years, even when she was older. All right, next page. One of the funny things that we find out, you remember when we were talking about coup in Dallas, talked about the Lincoln head penny that's pasted in the front cover of that date book. All right, that's it right there. In Roscoe White's date book, it's this picture of Lincoln. It's been slimmed down, but you notice the head's missing. His head's gone, his head's gone. You may not know it, but the government printed a memorial stamp of John Kennedy after his assassination. Top of his head's missing in the stamp. I don't know, are they playing with us? You tell me. Next page. This is one of the things that I would really like your help on. This picture was among the effects of Roscoe White. This is Roscoe White. These 4 other individuals, I need to know who they are. I believe that this one is this man right here. All right. His name is Jack Modisette, Jr. In May 1962, Lieutenant Modisette was stationed at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. He was an assistant in ONI to Hal Feeney. On April 14, 1962, Modisette's father, Modisette Sr., a Corpus Christi, Texas oil man, and a partner of President Kennedy's father in the Moquin Oil Company. Moquin is M-O for Modisette, K-E for Kennedy, and E-N for energy. Moquin Oil Company. And he was killed in a car wreck, one-car collision, or wreck. And records show, I have the record, that on that very same day his father was killed, Junior flies into Miami. Miami, of course, is the location of J.M. Wade. Any significance, ONI flying into Miami? Well, about a month later, on May the 11th, 1962, Modisette contacts CIA's David Morales at J.M. Wave. Morales, of course, was a primary planner and player in the ZR rifle program. In his May 18, 1962 memorandum of contact, Morales writes this. He's really complimentary of Morissette's demeanor and abilities, and writes that the two men made arrangements to keep in touch with each other by mail on problems of mutual interest. Don't know what that means. Help me learn more about that. Show you real quickly, next slide. These are some of the surveillance notations handwritten by the FBI during the time that they were surveilling Ricky and Tricia White. This next one I'd like a little help on. This is a torn out sheet that I found in his effects. Ricky didn't even know about it. I found this, and it's a listing of these names right here. Is that Corporal Sam, CPL Sams, Phelps, Knight, Kinshita, Foster, Casillas or whatever, Hampton, and Lynch. I know some Lynch, and Phelps could be Phillips, Knight, we know, we've heard that before. But I'd like to know if you can run down any of these names and perhaps help us in this whole thing. All right, I'm hurrying. How much time have I been over? Start throwing things if you want me to shut up. All right. What about the missing diary? Wouldn't you love to see it? Man, I'd pay good money for it. Will we ever see the diary? I agree with historian Edwin Hackett Fisher, who wrote, next slide, I think I made a slide. History is not what happened, but what the surviving evidence says happened. If you can hide the evidence and keep the secrets, then you can write the history. And they've certainly done that with the Kennedy assassination. Real quick, a couple of more slides is all. If you want to look further into this with me, this you can go on YouTube and see. It's called the West Texas Connection, and it's a video on YouTube, and it's a 5-part television series. 10 minutes, it's on a 10 o'clock news in Midland, Texas. Go watch it. There's a lot of information and may give you some leads in that. And you can go to this book. Sarah Peterson and Katana Zachary wrote The Lone Star Speaks. There's a couple of chapters in there on Roscoe White. But some of the other chapters about different people you'll find very interesting and intriguing. Next slide. This last slide, I promise. Fabrication or fact, you be the judge. Don't let somebody else tell you what they think about it. Try to understand for yourself what this is really all about. All right, let me see if I want to say anything else. Let me just say this, because this kind of sums it up for me. Who was Roscoe Anthony White? Was he insane? Did he fabricate the whole story? What kind of man would do this and leave it behind as a legacy for his family? A family who, according to those who knew him, Roscoe loved very, very deeply. Roscoe White's entire life is in conflict with such an action. Or was Roscoe White a soldier for some or some secret elite group within this land? A group who believe that they know best? Jack Ruby, a big-time player in this affair, said this: everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred. My motives, the people who had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in the position I'm in, will never let the true facts come above board to the family, to the world. Was Roscoe working for a group so powerful that they could carry out an assassination and then conceal the truth about their clandestine and forceful takeover of the country? Could Roscoe have been a man with a conscience, a man who, and this is kind of like what Teddy Kennedy said about Robert Kennedy at his funeral, a man who at the end of the day realized his wrong and tried to make it right, knew of the lie and tried to expose it, knew of our nation's great loss and tried to help retrieve it. We may never know the truth about Roscoe White affair. There's too much misinformation, disinformation, deceit, secrecy, and obfuscation. But mostly there's simply too little real concern. If Roscoe White was trying to tell the truth and no one listens, then just who are we? Thank you.
We're not letting him go yet.
Oh, they're not? Okay. Well, step right up.
Who's first?
Couple questions.
Just don't throw anything.
No. What can you tell us about the Reverend Jack Shaw, okay, who was privy to a lot of Roscoe's secrets, and especially information that Roscoe told him about Jagger's Child Stovall being the center of operations there in downtown Dallas for the assassination, A, and then B, about the circumstances surrounding Roscoe's death?
I don't know how, that's a long story. But in a nutshell, Reverend Jack Shaw, a good man, became Roscoe and Geneva's pastor. He counseled with them for years. And when Roscoe died, it was Reverend Jack Shaw that went to him. But prior to that, he had told him that he took lives, and he was sorry for it, that he had taken lives on foreign and domestic soil. And then when he's lying there, he was burnt, 90% of his body, in an explosion. And he's laying there on the stretcher and is confessing. He never confessed to John Kennedy's assassination. I'm sure he would never done that. But he did say that he had killed, on orders, people in and out of the country. He also, Jack actually went, after we started working on this and investigating this, we went with Jack Shaw to Midland and interviewed Geneva. She's old, she was in bad health, her mind's not as good, but he recorded about 40 hours of tape with her that he says are the most revealing stories he ever heard. One of them was that she was at the Carousel Club outside Ruby's office when Roscoe and Ruby were in the office, and she overheard them talking about the Bay of Pigs. Why would they be talking about the Bay of Pigs? That's about all she heard before they slammed the door on her. I could talk for hours about, but he is a very, very private man. He will not let me have the tapes. He will not talk about the content of the tapes. He'll just say they're very, very revealing.
So he's still alive?
He is still alive. Okay. Edward.
Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw and I have been two peas in a pod for about 50 years, dealing with pretty much the same subject matters. He mentioned two things tonight that are a primer for me tomorrow night. He mentioned John Mason Langford,
Yes.
and I'm going to add more information about Mr. Langford
Good.
and his involvement with as a special agent in the Office of Naval Intelligence, as well as his connection to the White House.
Good.
And he also mentioned Judith Campbell Exner, who is very, very important to the TFX fighter scandal, General Dynamics. And tomorrow night, I am going to go into great detail about all the crooks that are connected to General Dynamics. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be in your friend.
Yours too. Look forward to you. Thank y'all. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, J. Gary Shaw. I just did a quick calculation in my head, and I think this is the 9th conference that I've been to since I started coming. And I don't remember a better, more informative day than today was. There were so many interesting presentations, so many great speakers, so much information to try and digest, and it's going to take a bit. And I think that's all the more reason that I do hope that we create a DVD set from this, because there's just so much that takes place. And to try to digest it all in one day would be so difficult to do. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to go and call it a night. Those of you who are still with us on Zoom, thank you for being here. Those of you who are live, thank you for being here.